UFC Saudi Arabia takes place this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to give you my exact predictions for how I think every fight is going to play out on the card. So without further ado, let's get into the picks. As always, I look at my past week's performance to see what we can improve upon, and yeah, I'm going to be right back. Yes, we are once again putting on the donkey mask, because last week was just a bunch of donkey picks. Clayton Carpenter, I don't regret picking him at plus 270. He made it a pretty close fight. Rinya Nakamura didn't shoot a single takedown, and he's only really known for his wrestling. Carl Rosa, I thought maybe she could do enough damage on the feet, avoid the takedowns. That didn't happen. Ferreira, yep. Zachary Reese, knocked out himself. I predicted him to get the KO. Peyton Talbot, minus 3,000, doesn't win. Okay. Kevin Holland, never picking him again. Probably shouldn't have picked him in this one. He's too busy worried about 45-70s. Jamal Hill, kind of thought that he would outwork Jiri. I'm not going to lie. Jiri's a wild man. Picking against him in a fight is always dangerous. He's only really lost to Alex Pereira in the UFC. And, yeah, picking Hill was a bad move. Umar in the co-main, I thought that was a lock. Turns out Merab is just a decision king, no matter who is against. So, yeah. And then the good picks, of course, Sopai, Guskov, Jailton, Islam, you know, only the heaviest favorites. That's the ones I got right in this card, the heaviest favorites. So, let's get into Saudi Arabia. Let's see if we can improve. Let's get it. First fight on the card, we have HAMDY Abdelwahab taking on Jamal Pogues. And I just simply cannot pick Jamal Pogues to win a UFC fight. There is a lot of green W's here. It's against Josh Parisian, who got starched by Robelos de Spain. You know, Robelos de Spain's only UFC win was against Josh Parisian. We got Thomas Peterson. I guess, in theory, that is pretty impressive since Thomas Peterson did beat Mo Usman. You know, Paulo Renato Jr., not really notable. Jamal Pogues is not going out there to knock you out. He's more just going out there to maintain a pace over 15 minutes. HAMDY Abdelwahab, he was considered 5-0. But they took away 2 wins because they were bare-knuckle MMA wins and not actual MMA wins. And then his only win in the UFC got overturned because he did roids. So, in this matchup, I think it's better to pick the guy who did roids in the past, and it's in his home country, kind of. No, he's from Egypt, so that's not Saudi Arabian. Yeah, what is this fight doing on this card? I'm not really sure. HAMDY at least showed me that he has hands. And HAMDY has at least showed me that he can commit to a takedown, and he will lay on top to secure the round. And that's exactly what he did against Dontel Mays in his only fight in the UFC. So with that being said, enough blabber about the first fight of the night. We're going to go with the minus 110 HAMDY Abdelwahab to win by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Bogdan Grad taking on Lucas Alexander. Bogdan Grad has only one fight in the UFC. It wasn't really a UFC fight. It was a Contender Series fight. And in that one, he won by a very narrow split decision. And I think what got him the decision win was the fact that he actually employed takedowns. He employed all versions of martial arts. He wasn't just striking, even though his striking repertoire is pretty vast. Bogdan Grad is very good on the feet. Now, here's the thing about this matchup. It is basically a pick'em. And I have no idea how Lucas Alexander can win this one, okay? So he has a KO loss to Jeka Sergey. That was his last fight. If you actually watch that back, he was showing signs of success. But the thing with Lucas Alexander that you see in most of his losses, you know, like Joe Anderson Brito, is he'll find moments of success and then he'll go all in on the kill. And sometimes when he goes all in on the kill, he gets himself caught. Now, in this matchup, I just think Bogdan Grad has more paths to victory. He can actually shoot for takedowns. He can actually KO Lucas Alexander since he's been KO'd before. And ultimately, I think one of those two things will happen. I think either we're going to see a Bogdan Grad, you know, decision win, very clean, very takedowny, or we're going to see a Bogdan Grad KO victory over Lucas Alexander. Either way, not sure what the betting line is doing here, but it's so close. And you can look at Tapology. They have, you know, Bogdan Grad picked 83%. So, for all those reasons, more paths to victory, I'm going to take Bogdan Grad to beat Lucas Alexander by a decision. Next fight in the card, we have Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. And I'll keep this breakdown short. Bueno Silva, her striking isn't really to die for. There's not really much there. She is a jiu-jitsu specialist. But Jasmine Jasudavicius, this is where the matchup becomes a little tricky. She is going to shoot for takedowns, and she's going to go right into Bueno Silva's world. If this stays on the feet, I do think Jasudavicius actually is the better striker. So with that being said, if she is better on the feet than Bueno Silva, and I think the ground game might actually cancel itself out, I think Jasudavicius can grind her way to a decision victory. It is going to be dangerous because in a lot of Bueno Silva's fights, she is very close to securing submissions. Like against Pennington, she was in multiple back takes. Against Chiasson in the last fight, she low-key could have, wrapped up a rear naked choke before she got doctor stoppaged. Chiasson was employing a very similar strategy that Jasudavicius is going to employ, which is chase takedowns. Doesn't matter if they're good at jiu-jitsu. It actually is better that they're good at jiu-jitsu, because if they're good at jiu-jitsu, that means they're more willing to let the fight play out on the ground, even though they're on the bottom and losing the fight. So for all those reasons, I'm going to take Jasmine Jasudavicius to win this by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Terrence McKinney taking on Damir Hadzovic, and Hadzovic being like a plus 300, it is kind of tempting considering Terrence McKinney is kill or be killed. He's very live to lose. That's what I'm saying. Doesn't mean I'm going to pick against Terrence McKinney because of that. If you do some digging, Damir Hadzovic has had struggles in the past with takedowns. Most of his fights that he's lost in the UFC or on the regional scene is because he's been controlled and taken down on the ground, and he also has multiple submission losses. Now, you look at Terrence McKinney, he's coming off a highlight KO loss, and then before that, his losses, were from a KO flying knee, from a rear naked choke because he got knocked down before that. So after such a stunning KO loss, I'm expecting Terrence McKinney to also do his homework like I did, realize that Hadzovic, his takedown defense is kind of mid, and commit to takedowns. And I think he's going to commit to takedowns very early. And for those reasons, I think Terrence McKinney will find his sub early. Give me Terrence McKinney to win this by submission. Next fight on the card, we have Shamilllllllllll taking on Thomas Peterson. Now, this fight is a lot closer than the lines indicate. If Shamilllllllll cannot secure takedowns against Thomas Peterson, this is going to be a standing affair for 3 rounds. Now, Thomas Peterson doesn't throw with the most volume. I am expecting Gaziev to outwork Peterson on the feet, considering it's only a 3-round fight. The only times we've seen Gaziev really in horrific waters is in that 5-round fight against Biggie Boy. Whenever a fight gets extended past round 1 or 2, Gaziev does slow down a little bit. But ultimately, I think he's going to have the power edge here by a large margin. So the shots that he's going to land on Peterson are going to look way more impressive to the judges than the shots Peterson lands on Gaziev. I don't think he'll find a finish. I think if Gaziev secures a takedown, he just wins the round. So with that being said, the paths to victory are massive for Gaziev here. I'm going to take Shamil Gaziev to win this by decision. Next fight in the card, we have Muhammad Naimov taking on Khan Ofli. Now, Khan Ofli was a former Finn's Hammerlock. And of course, when you're the Finn's Hammerlock, sometimes you just get sent to the netherworld. And that's exactly what happened to Khan Ofli. He got KO'd very brutally in round 2 by Myron Santos. That was an interesting fight to watch. So basically, whenever Khan Ofli can't secure takedowns, he becomes a very reckless striker. He will throw himself into the pocket in an attempt to land a shot. And I think against a guy like Muhammad Naimov, Naimov doesn't have the highest IQ. Naimov doesn't really shoot takedowns when he should. A lot of red flags with Naimov. But if it becomes a brawl, like a stand and bang brawl, I'm trusting Naimov to land the KO blow before Khan Ofli does. If Khan Ofli does shoot for takedowns, that is a path to victory, since Naimov has struggled with takedowns in the past and even got submitted in round 3 in his last fight. But if, we're not going to take the Doctor Strange method this week where you see all the scenarios. We're going to take the scenario that's, right there in front of us. Khan Ofli is a reckless striker when he can't get takedowns. Muhammad Naimov has pretty crazy power for the featherweight division. So with those two things being said, I'm going to take Naimov to win this by round 2 KO. Next fight in the card, we have Faraz Ziam taking on Mike Davis. Now, it is always tricky to pick Mike Davis in a Mike Davis fight, considering he fights basically once a year. He fought 10 months ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. He literally fights once a year. But every time he gets into the octagon, he is showing us a little something more to his game. At first, it was takedowns against him that were his enemy. People would take him down, people would submit him, people would ground and pound him out. But over the years, he is now the wrestling god. He's the one shooting for 9+ takedowns in a fight. He's the one that has more power on the feet than most of his opponents at lightweight that he's faced to this point. And in this specific matchup, I think Faraz Ziam, yes, he is trending upwards. They're both on 4-fight winning streaks. But if you do a little digging, Michael Figlak, not in the UFC. Jai Herbert, he just kept the range, really. And Jai Herbert does the same thing. So that was like a range-on-range fight. Claudio Puelles landed a lot of takedowns in this fight. Landed 7+ minutes of control time. And Faraz Ziam just sneaked out a split decision. It's not until the Matt Frivola fight that people are starting to gas up Ziam. If the Frivola fight didn't happen, I think the odds in this one would be Mike Davis, like -300. Oh. But is that trying to tell me something? I don't know. But I think Mike Davis is the play here. Faraz Ziam has always struggled with takedowns. Matt Frivola didn't really commit fully to takedowns in their fight. He had success when he did shoot for them, but he really kept it standing. I don't like Ziam's volume compared to Mike Davis. Mike Davis, I think, lands double the significant strikes per minute compared to Ziam. So if it's going to be a volume fight, I think Mike Davis wins. If there's going to be takedowns involved, I think Mike Davis wins. I think really Ziam's only path here is to keep this at range and actually finish Mike Davis. I don't really see how Ziam is going to win a decision over Mike Davis unless he completely neutralizes Mike Davis's takedowns, which I don't think will happen because we've seen Ziam controlled and taken down in the past. I think the easy pick is Faraz Ziam because, you know, Matt Frivola KO happened so recently. Mike Davis fights once a year. But I'm not going to take the layup. That's the low-hanging fruit pick. I'm going to, dig deeper into the tree, get that orange, take a bite of that thing. I'm picking Mike Davis by decision. Next fight in the card, we have Said Nurmagomedov taking on Vinicius Oliveira. And this is literally the exact same idea as the last fight. So the low-hanging fruit pick, obviously the apple that's right there, it's right there for you, is Vinicius Oliveira, lock dog, 4-fight winning streak, 2 wins in the UFC, 1 against Ricky Simon, which was pretty good. But do a little more digging, and you'll find that, number 1, Ricky Simon didn't even shoot for a takedown in that fight, so I don't know what he was thinking. Number 2, Bernardo Sopai, he did land a round 3 KO. But Sopai had massive success on the ground with his takedowns. He actually amassed a lot of control time before getting finished in round 3. And if you do some digging on Said Nurmagomedov's tape, all of his fights, number 1, take place in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi. So he almost always has home field advantage. His only recent loss was Jonathan Martinez, where I actually went back and watched it, and I actually think he beat Jonathan Martinez. The only reason that he lost was because Martinez had a lot of success reversing positions on the ground and, securing his own top position. Against a guy like Vinicius Oliveira, I think what's going to happen here is Said is just going to go all in on takedowns. He has had fights before where he was gone all in on takedowns. And in his home, not his home country, but with a lot of his fans in attendance, I believe he's just going to go back to the well, do the same strat that he's been doing to win his previous UFC fights, which is, stand and bang for a couple minutes, commit the takedowns, secure the round. I think Said Nurmagomedov wins by decision. Next fight in the card is Sergey Pavlovich taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And in this one, a lot of back and forth. I love Biggie Boy. He is my guy. I have picked him in a lot of his recent fights. And it has been profitable because he's basically a pretty decent-sized underdog in most of these fights. Against Tuivasa, I think he was like -200-ish. And he barely won that one. The split decision's crazy. Against Shamilllllllllll, that was the Finn's Hammerlock. It seems like that's the last time we've hit a Finn's Hammerlock, 10 months and 3 weeks ago. But yeah, and then against Jailton Almeida, I picked Almeida. Against Chris Daukaus, I picked Jairzinho. I love this guy. He's made me a lot of money. But in this one, it's easy to write off Pavlovich after getting dusted by Aspinall and after losing a clean decision to Volkov. But I think he has something to prove, I think people are starting to write him off. I think he's starting to feel that. And he has an insane reach advantage, 6 inches of reach. Jairzinho has no out for takedowns. Like, if this fight gets to the ground, UFC is not real. Both of these guys do not shoot for takedowns. If you're telling me that this is going to stay standing, I think Jairzinho is just going to get knocked down in round 1. We've seen Jairzinho knock down round 1 before to insane heavy hitters like Francis Ngannou starched him in 20 seconds. Pavlovich has a similar style where he's just going to burst into the pocket, throw his overhands with his gigantically long arms, and I think he's going to find the chin of Rosenstrike. Now, there is a world where Rosenstrike, you know, powers that jab, wins a decision that way. So Biggie Boy decision might be worth a sprinkle. But in terms of using logic to figure out who's going to win, Biggie Boy's been knocked out multiple times. Sergey has multiple round 1 KOs. Sergey needs this fight to prove that he's still back. Jairzinho can't afford to lose this one, if we're being honest. So, Sergey Pavlovich by round 1 KO. That brings us to the co-main event of the evening. Shara Bullet taking on MVP, Michael Venom Page. And in this one, yet another fight where I don't envision a lot of takedowns occurring. Another fight where I envision it staying on the feet for the full fight. I don't actually see either fighter getting KO'd here. Even though I think it's going to stay standing for 3 rounds. At the end of the day, this is in Saudi Arabia. There's Saudi Arabian judging. Are they really going to rule a 3-round fight in favor of Michael Page over Shara Bullet? That's really asking for a lot. Even if Michael Page wins 30-27 cleanly, the judges will still somehow score this 29-28 Shara Bullet. I'm just convinced that, you know, the Saudi Arabian judges, the Abu Dhabi judges, they have a little more leeway to give points to, you know, Russian, Dagestani, OV, EV fighters. So in this one, if we're going to break down skill for skill, I think it's pretty even. So with that being said, I think that Shara is just going to slightly edge out Michael Page in the crooked Abu Dhabi Saudi Arabian judges' eyes. Give me Magomedov by a crooked decision. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. Israel Adesanya taking on Nasruddin Imavov. This video is getting a little long, so I'm going to try to keep this breakdown as short and sweet as possible. I think Izzy is falling off, okay? I think he's done. 2 fights in a row now where pretty clean losses. Strickland decision loss. Duplessis submission loss. I think in this one, it's just going to be similar. I think Imavov can find the submission. Izzy's takedown defense is not good. Izzy, when he's on the ground, his get up game is not good. Imavov, I think, could potentially find a submission on the ground. I think he could find a ground and pound KO on the ground. That's asking for a lot. Izzy throws leg kicks a lot. That's his big weapon in his arsenal. And Imavov is good at grabbing the leg and turning that leg kick into a takedown. So I think that's going to happen early. Imavov's going to land the takedowns early. Izzy's going to be, you know, psyched out of his head. Oh, maybe I shouldn't throw the leg kicks as often because I'm getting taken down every time I do. And then once you eliminate the leg kicks, then it becomes just a boxing match between the two. And if it's a boxing match between the two with takedowns from Imavov as well, I think Imavov will actually win that. I think he has more paths to victory, as does most people that fight Izzy. They have more paths to victory. The only concern is he's French, and, you know, sometimes French fighters just let you down when you need them the most. That's the only cause for concern. He's French. That's not a racist thing. Just there's not really good UFC French fighters. Cyril Gane, you know, he got to the top and lost. You know, Kevin Jousset, on his way to the rankings, gets destroyed. You know, not Faraz Ziam, we'll see earlier on the card. But ultimately, I'm going to side with the Frenchman in this one. Hopefully, he doesn't let me down. Give me Nasruddin Imavov by decision. Thank you for getting to the end of another episode of Finn's Chats. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments who your favorite underdog of the week is this week. Low-key, I was going to pick Al Sawadi as my favorite, but that fight got canceled, so can't use that one. Let me know in the comments. I'm leaning Imavov as my favorite dog. Have a great day, you savage.